So the idea of legacy is you start on this piece of property, you nurture it, you caretake it, you watch it make progress, you watch different plants come in, different animals come in, you watch the soil build, you watch all this happen. What we want is for future family, we want that legacy to continue. We don't want to just sell it for condominiums. We want to actually see that legacy move forward so that the land becomes a connection to a sacred task of redemption, remediation on that land. That takes more than a generation.
My name is Lisa, mother of 8 and creator of the blog and YouTube channel Farmhouse on Boone. On this podcast, I like to talk about simplifying your life so you can live out your priorities. I help you learn how to cook from scratch and decorate on a budget through this podcast and my courses, Simple Sourdough and the Simple Sewing series. I also help people reach their goals from home through my business courses, Create Your Blog Dream and YouTube Success Academy. I will leave links to these resources in the show notes and description box below. Now let's get into the show. Welcome back to the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. I can't believe I've never had Joel Salatin on the podcast. If you're in the homestead world, you've been to any expos or conferences or read any books or listened to podcasts, you've probably heard of Joel Salatin. He educates people on how to start with a small farm, make it profitable, among so many other things. He really casts a big vision and helps people to see, the legacy behind this lifestyle that a lot of us are striving to live. So without further ado, I think you're really going to love this conversation with Joel Salatin. All right. Well, Joel, this has been a long-awaited guest. I know you are on a lot of podcasts. I've listened to you on a number of podcasts and at a number of homestead expos and various things. So I know my audience will mostly already know you, but can you introduce yourself for those who don't?
Sure. So I'm Joel Salatin. Our family co-owns Polyface Farm in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley. And we've been here since 1961. I was just a little chumper when my mom and dad bought the original property. We've added to it over the years. But here we are.
All right. And you were saying at a recent homestead expo that I was at, and you and I were on the same panel. And on that panel, there was several people up there who were, I felt, much better speakers than me and could speak with a lot more words. And so I was kind of quiet. But you mentioned that your mom is 100 years old. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
In fact, she's now 100 years old plus 10 months.
Yeah, so you go by the month. That makes sense.
Yeah. Once they hit 100, you start going by the month. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if she makes it to December 11th, she'll be 101.
I have never to this day, I really don't think, unless I'm mistaken, that I've ever met someone who's 100 years old. It seems something that wouldn't be that rare, but it really is that rare.
Yeah, it's pretty rare. But my Teresa's grandmother made it to 106 months. And I've known a couple of centenarians.
Centenarians, yeah.
It is very rare, yeah.
Yeah, it is. She must live a healthy, active lifestyle. I'm sure we could talk about that for quite a while. But your main focus, the way you educate people all across this whole world, really, is on farming and being profitable with your farm and getting people started on homesteading. And a lot of times when I watch you at different homestead expos and conferences, it's a lot about casting the vision and getting people, a vision for how they can use their land. A lot of people are wanting to get started. And then now it seems like it might be harder than ever. I don't know if you agree with that or what it looks like in your neck of the woods.
Harder to get started because of the price of land?
Yeah.
Yes and no. I mean, we've got some, I think you're perceptive. I think we've got a couple divergent trends. One trend is simply that we know a lot more. I mean, look at what you can learn on YouTube now. I mean,
right.
A skill set or, my books, but
yes,
but there's a lot of information out now. I mean, I tell people, man, if I had the information at my disposal, 50 years ago, man, I think we could have shaved a few years off of our learning curve. The beauty is that we do have a lot of information now, and we have cool technology. I mean, when we started in the 60s, Electric fence energizers were very rudimentary. They almost didn't work, and it was a real problem. Today we've got really dependable, high energy, cool. You don't have to worry about your animals getting out very much if you take care of things. Yeah, the price of land has definitely escalated. That's for sure. But I think the trade-off is that we do have a lot more information at our fingertips, and there's a lot more awareness in the culture,
right?
That's driving a desire for this. And so, I'm thinking about when we started, nobody even heard of the organic word. I mean, it wasn't even spoken. And today, everybody's thinking about wellness and alternative therapies and all sorts of things. And so
that makes sense.
While land is a little bit higher. Oh, and the other thing that we have today that we haven't ever had from if you're gonna go into a farming business, is the ability to ship.
Yeah. Economically.
We could have never shipped like we do now, back in the old days. But goodness, I mean, we've got, we ship nationwide, and I mean, you can get software now from UPS that where you weigh the box on the scale, and it automatically computes the time to the destination and gives you the ounces of dry ice brick that have to go in that box with that weight to that destination. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's all very streamlined. And then, like you mentioned, the demand's a lot higher because you don't have to educate consumers on why it's better. They already know that. So they're actually just looking for someone who can supply that need. And then now that we buy everything online and everything ships, there's all this infrastructure in place for people to, get things across the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then one question I think people want to know a lot of times, we talked about land's higher, but I mean, things have always gone up over time. I think the last few years have been a little bit exceptional, but I think people think they need 30, 40, 50 acres sometimes to have a legitimate homestead situation. But you teach how people can use very small amounts of land and how they can get started with that. So what would you say to that? Like, how can you start, and with what kind of animal and what kind of acreage?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously it depends. An acre in Nevada is different than an acre in Georgia.
Right.
Okay? So let's agree that, there's some the differences like that. But in general, you can start with a very, very small hub. I mean, the other trend, the flip side of the high land price is that there is an unprecedented amount of land that's available. The average farmer is now 60 years old. So, I mean, daily I get requests. Can you find me a young person that can manage my farm? Can you find me a young person? And so we have unbelievable land. We had an apprentice leave us, finished, and went back up to upstate New York. Within 30 days, he had 3 landowners come to him and offered him a total of 1,000 acres for free. Just, can you do something with it? And so we have unprecedented. I mean, we're almost back to the Little House on the Prairie.
Okay.
Where we have a tremendous amount of available land that is not being utilized, that is waiting for somebody to love on it. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because you don't need a very big hub to start. I mean, I look at our farm, we could basically do everything we do on a 5-acre hub and lease everything else. I mean, we already lease about, 14 properties or so in the area. And I'm all about a stable hub. Yeah, you need a place where you can live, have a garden, have a corral, some greenhouse. You need a hub. But beyond the hub, the beautiful thing about mobile infrastructure and lightweight infrastructure is that you don't need a very big hub. If you want a farm store, if you want a parking lot, 5 acres is a whole lot of land for a hub.
Yeah. I can imagine that. I can picture how you would set it up. Obviously, it depends on trees and hills and how it's all laid out. And like you said, there's places where there's not enough grass for many acres. So it really depends. One of the financial questions we got from the listeners was, if you were to pick just one stream of income from a homestead, what would it be? That could be a loaded question.
One stream of income. For me, that would be broilers. Meat chickens. I'll tell you why. Because meat chickens have an 8-week turnaround, and a lot of financial elements in a business, small business, is about cash flow.
Right.
And so quick cash turnaround and multiple sales. I mean, ideally, if you're in business, ideally you sell something every day, and that's where the old what's called butter and egg money,
Yeah.
Lousy comic strip, butter and egg money. That wasn't the farm's major income, but it provided cash flow. It kept you in shoes and pants through the year. And so I'm okay with a milk cow. Historically, at least until now, pet milk, and depending on where you live, milk can be a real problem. And eggs are okay, but eggs are the most price conscious of all the things you can sell, because they're everyday food.
Right.
And so I like the broiler because it's kind of a hybrid between kind of something special, but it has a fast turnaround.
Right, because it's 6 weeks, right? Or 6 to 8 weeks?
8 weeks.
8 weeks, okay.
Generally 8 weeks, 7 to 8 weeks. But yeah, I mean, that's as fast as a radish almost.
Right.
And the beauty of the chicken is, as small farmers or homesteaders, we're doing everything by hand. Well, if I'm gonna pick up pounds of material to sell, I'd much rather pick up a $4 a pound chicken than a 50-cent a pound cabbage.
Right.
Just from a how many pounds of stuff do you have to move to make your income? Now, the beauty of produce is that there's no regulations, so you can just you can start doing produce anytime. The downside of produce is it's a low dollar. It's a lot of water. You're toting a lot of water, so it's a low dollar per item that you're doing, and a lot of people are doing it. I mean, because it is easy to get into,
right?
And so the result is it's a fairly crowded thing. Whereas the pastured broiler is still a bit of a, in most places it's still a bit of a specialty, and you can be kind of distinctive that way and still get your fast turnaround. So,
yeah. Now you mentioned milk, and were you meaning like the regulations as far as selling? Is that where it gets messy for milk?
Yeah. The regulations for milk, and of course, a lot of states now you can have herd shares, you can do cow shares, you can sell it as pet milk in some states.
Yeah,
and so there are workarounds on that, but the problem with the herd share is that it's clunky. If I'm going to be gone for a week, I don't want my milk. You can't legally sell that milk to somebody else who maybe says, "Hey, I've got out of town guests coming. Could I get an extra gallon this week?" You can't legally make those kind of changes. So that's why I say it's clunky. And in farming, farming every day isn't 70 degrees and puffy blue clouds and plenty of soil moisture. There's rough days and good days. And so being able to, adjust your inventory easy is good. So yeah, but as far as cash flow, actual having something to sell, every week, there's nothing beats eggs and milk.
Yeah. Where I live, so we don't currently have a dairy cow. We did, but we don't currently. We pay $15 a gallon for milk, and she sells out. So just from a perspective of never really trying to earn money from my homestead directly, it seems like it would be a really good income stream here if you had, say, 4 cows you were milking and you were selling out. Now, I know that's a lot of work too. So are you counting in, obviously, time investment? I think broilers are probably a little bit less.
Well, and look, there's no free lunch. I mean, everything has its asset and its liability. And I mean, like, yeah, the four cows, if you can get $15 a gallon for milk and the cow gives, 3 gallons a day and you've got 4 of them, that's a pretty good income. Just remember that there is nothing as confining as a cow. I mean, we're talking about morning and evening or daily, every single day. You have to be there. I mean, on Christmas, on Easter, on Thanksgiving, your birthday,
right. Yep.
anniversary, every single day.
Negative 10 out.
Yeah. Whereas one of the beauties of broilers is, if you want to take a 1 month break, you can take a 1 month break. I mean, obviously we don't raise them in the winter. It's a summer thing, nothing in the winter. Yeah. But there's nothing like milk for cash flow, but there's nothing that ties you down as much as a milk cow.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking a break from this conversation to tell you about today's sponsor, Azure Standard. You've heard about them on here many times. I have been using Azure Standard to source high quality organic grains and spices and bulk cheese, meat, so many things for many years now. Long before I was having a podcast at all, I was going to a local Azure Standard drop. So Azure Standard's been around for many, many years. It works essentially like a co-op where you and a bunch of like-minded individuals in your area all place an order and have a drop location that is near you. So in my area, there are 2 drop locations within a 30-minute radius of me, so I could choose to go to either one. We usually do the same one all the time just because we're used to how that one operates and where it meets and all of that. But it can be flexible where you could, choose the drop location near you, you place an order, and then a big truck comes in and delivers everything from all of the local people's order who placed an order to that drop location. So you get to take advantage of pooling together a large order for better pricing and better sourcing. So there's a lot of things that I cannot find locally at all, even if I wanted to, like 50-pound bags of organic hard white wheat that I use to make, muffins, bread, rolls, so many things. I get bulk all-purpose flour, fruit. I really love their raw organic cheddar cheese. It comes in a big block. So instead of buying tiny little blocks of cheese at my local grocery store that is organic and raw, it's hard to find in general, but I can find it at a nicer grocery store, but it's like $10 per little block and you can get this massive block on Azure Standard. I know that if you head over there, you are going to find some things that maybe you either can't find at all locally or that are much cheaper on Azure Standard through this co-op style model. You can head over to azurestandard.com, so AZURE standard.com. Use code SIMPLE15, so this is 15% off an order of $100 or more to a drop location near you, and place an order and see how you like it. I'm sure you're going to find some things on there like in-season produce. That's such a great price by buying stuff in season, and then bulk finds as well. We really love it, and I know that you will too. Again, azurestandard.com, code SIMPLE15 for 15% off an order of $100 or more to your local drop location. Now, one person says, I've heard that it doesn't save you money to raise your own meat. Is that true, or is there a way to reduce cost? I mean, I think if we're comparing apples to apples, quality, is going to be a factor. You're like the other day I hardly ever go to the store. I usually do like the pickup orders or whatever. And I was in there and I saw they had a big old package of chicken breast bone in for $6. I'm like, man, I've been shopping at farms for a long time now. I couldn't believe you could get chicken that cheap. I had no idea you could get chicken that cheap. Now, was it high quality? No, probably not.
Yeah. So the question is always, well, what are you comparing it to? What's your standard? If your standard is, Tyson chicken, then no, there's no way you'll ever raise your own chicken as cheaply as they can raise theirs. But if you're comparing it to, to the best quality chicken you can find at Whole Foods, absolutely you can beat that price. So I think Now, there's no question you can save money growing your own food, and you certainly can save money growing your own when you compare it to a comparable product,
Yes.
at the grocery store. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then what are some mistakes you see new homesteaders who maybe are going to raise their own meat or their own vegetables or their milk making that? Because some people, it seems like, really do end up paying more, getting maybe the infrastructure in place. Maybe it needs to be more of a long-term investment. Are there some mistakes that you see there?
Oh, wow. Well, if we start down the list of mistakes,
Big
probably
question.
yeah, probably it is. Well, probably the number one mistake is jumping into too many things at once. Experimentation is expensive, and you've got to you've got to do your repetitions, in order to gain mastery. And so people, they come into this and they read the articles, they read the stories, and oh, I want to do chickens and turkeys and cows and pigs and rabbits and
Right.
pheasants and quail eggs and and
Yeah.
all, and before you know it, the sheriff is calling you because the SWAT team has your cow cornered out on the interstate, and and it's a pretty horrendous day. So the turtle won the race, the rabbit didn't, and so enjoy the journey. You don't have to solve everything and grow everything in a day. And so I would say the number one mistake I see is getting too many things in, and then what you have is you have big oopses, great big oopses, big disasters, because you've got so many things going on, you're not doing anything really, really well. So just start with start small, prototype. Babies are born like embryos; they're not adults. So
Right.
you birth it small. That's
Yeah.
probably number one. Number two goes along with it, and that is especially with animals, getting animals prior to your infrastructure getting ready. I mean,
Oh, yes.
if you don't have a corral that will hold a cow, physically, you're not ready to get a cow. Because here's what happens: you go out to that farm and there's that cute little two cows, and oh, we're going to buy. Oh, these are wonderful, and you see them in the field, and they just seem as gentle as can be. You put them on a trailer and you bring them home, and they come off of your trailer and they turn into gazelles.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, they're in the adjoining county, and you've just spent 2 days in a SWAT team trying to get them in. So you gotta make sure that you have a corral, something to contain the animals. With chickens, the most common thing is people get their chickens before they have their processing equipment, and it takes months, usually, to get your processing equipment together, and those chickens are going to grow in 8 weeks. 8 weeks is going to go by really, really fast if you don't have your processing equipment ready. So I'll tell people, don't ever buy a chicken until you actually have your picker, till you know what you're going to do with them, at the end.
Right.
So,
That makes sense.
yeah. So get your infrastructure in place so you're not chasing animals, and you keep them under control. And then probably the three is probably good enough for the question. Probably the third one is just inefficiency. Since if you're not making a living at it, and you kind of look at it like a hobby, you can put up with a lot of inefficiency.
Right.
And like hauling water instead of putting in a water line, like hand feeding instead of using self feeders.
Yeah, you can deal with all that on a small scale. You're right.
Yeah. And it just you suddenly you spend an hour a day doing chores for half a dozen animals, and it
Right.
just eats up your time. Thinking about efficiency and trying to get that settled as you go along. I mean, thinking about it. I know you're enjoying the life, and you're enjoying smelling the humus and watching the butterflies and all that stuff. And there's certainly a time for that. But doing your doing your due diligence can I do this faster? Can I save steps here? Can I invest in a little bit of infrastructure so I don't have to carry buckets of water? Those kind of things are just huge in reducing your chore time and making it more efficient.
That makes a lot of sense. I know you probably get asked this a lot, but if somebody they're wanting to get to a little piece of property to start working on all of this, it can vary very much across the country, but what are some main criteria that you tell them to look for?
Well, here are some of my never nevers.
Okay.
Or my, here's what you don't want. Number one, it's hard to farm in the desert. It's really hard to farm in the desert. So go somewhere where there's some water.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. A little bit of water. Number two is, when I say, water is good, but too much water can be a tough thing too.
Yeah.
So I say stay away from Hurricane Alley. Stay away from where all the hurricanes come in all the time. I mean, look at those poor people down there in North Carolina right now. I mean, it is just mind-boggling what's going on. And I realize that's a very anomaly, but
kind of an unprecedented thing. Yeah.
It is. But yeah, give yourself a little bit of room from the beach is
Okay.
what I mean, especially here on the Atlantic, the Atlantic seaboard up through Florida and stuff. Get inland a little bit. So that's a couple things. And then the next thing is to think about their proximity to supplies.
Okay.
I would much rather have 5 acres within a half an hour of plumbers, electricians, small engine mechanics, chainsaw shop, auto repair places, markets. Okay. People that are going to buy, people that might want to come out for a butterfly tour. I would much rather I have 5 acres, 30 minutes from civilization than 500 acres, 2 hours away from civilization.
Right.
I know the land gets more expensive as you head towards civilization, but you also have way more opportunity and opportunity to sell, opportunity to collaborate with skill sets that you don't have, those kind of things. So that's a consideration. In fact, I know we had an apprentice who left us, who left. He's finished, and he actually bought a little 5-acre place. He could have bought more, but he bought a little 5-acre place at a big highway intersection in Ohio. I think he said something like 80,000 cars a day go by his front gate.
Wow.
And so he bought that 5 acres. I mean, it was not the cheapest land, but he's got 80,000 people driving by his driveway every day. He's full-time farming. I mean, he just sailed. I mean, he just went. And so he's only got 5 acres, so he doesn't have a cow. But what he does, he collaborates with a guy farther out in the country that's got beef. He sells his beef.
Right.
So the beef farmer gets advantage of the guy, and generally the guy that makes the final sale is the guy that makes the most money. The one that actually collects the money from the consumer, that's the person that actually makes the most money in the value chain.
Right.
So think about proximity to skill sets, to markets, to collaborations, to partnerships, and things like that. And then I would say the final mistake I would say is you're living in the country. Enjoy it. Don't try to live in the city in the country. That means your kids aren't going to be in all the little league games. Your daughter's not going to be in the ballet. You're not going to be running into town to the movies. You're going to get your enjoyment out of the creek, the pond, the sunset, the garden, the things that you're doing, putting up hay, the work that you do. And that also means living cheaply in a house. You don't need a Taj Mahal. You don't waste your money on a great big house build out. live in an RV, live in a tent, live in a bungalow, make something small that you can, that's conducive to adding on to. When Daniel built his house, he actually built it and actually put in the lintels in the wall so that in the future, and he actually did this when they expanded the house, he was able to just whack out that area, and he had a nice already a built-in doorway. And think about making the cheapest, most frugal domicile you can imagine, but then make it so you can add on in the future,
right,
if you need to. So those are just some ideas.
Yeah, you don't want to be over leveraged on everything. That's going to be really hard to turn a profit. That makes a lot of sense.
Exactly.
Now, you said that guy was full-time farming. Did you mean on his 5 acres? I think a lot of people will be very curious about that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
he's got greenhouses. He does pick your own strawberries and higher valued stuff. Mesclun mix and things like that in the greenhouses. But he value adds. He turns stuff into salsa instead of selling tomatoes. He makes salsa.
Okay.
It's amazing. I mean, Ben Hartman, who wrote the book Lean Farm, and now he's got a book, The Lean Micro Farm. I mean, this guy's been making a full-time living on 1.5 acres for 20 years.
Wow.
1.5 acres. And there are rules. In Canada, they started SPIN farming, SPIN. It's an acronym for sustainable, intensive. I can't think of what all the. But anyway, it's all about urban full-time farmers that are making a full-time living in suburbia or right in the edge of the urban sector. And absolutely, you can absolutely make a living on 5 acres if you do high value stuff and you value add it.
Okay, so you mentioned pick your own strawberries. Have you heard a lot? Like, is pick your own a pretty profitable thing to do? We have some pick your own in our area, and they're always swarming with people. I mean, they started putting in flowers, pick your own flowers, pick your own berries, they put in everything. So I think there's just nowhere else. People like those experience things. Is that what you're finding?
Absolutely, they do. And what I will tell you is that I loved you saying, now they're putting in flowers. The hardest part in marketing is getting a customer.
Yeah, once you have them.
But once you have the customer, I like your strawberries. Can I get flowers? Can I get chicken? Can I get eggs? Can I get a turkey for Thanksgiving?
Right.
So the easiest marketing in the world is to add additional items to your offering. That's the easiest marketing because you've already got a loyal customer. They're looking around. Hey, what else can I do? Can I come out for a hayride? Can I?
Right.
Can I come out at Halloween for my kids to get their faces painted and take surgical tubes and shoot baby potatoes at a Target somewhere for $1 a piece. I mean,
just anything. Yeah,
it's unbelievable. I mean, I've traveled all over the world, and the stuff that I've seen, the creative things that I've seen farmers come up with that just build, experiences. I mean, one guy he'd taken some crushed stone and made a pretty big crushed stone lot, and he bought these pedal tractors, little kids pedal.
Yep.
He bought a green one, a red one, a blue one, and an orange one. And he had these pedal tractors where kids could come out and ride these pedal tractors around this big crushed gravel area. Kids love that kind of stuff. And so when kids are having a good time, in about a week, they're going to be pulling on mommy's hand saying, that place we went, I want to go back there. Guess what? Guess who goes back again? Mommy's back right there. And now she's going to buy some eggs and some flowers and some strawberries and some other things. If you're going to make a living on a small farm, it has to be completely people centric. If you don't like people, you're going to have a hard time. And of course, most commercial farmers actually don't like people. That's one of the reasons they're farming. I don't want to see nobody.
Right.
And so those of us who have made livings on small farms, you've got to have a love in your heart for people, and you've got to be ready to smile, be gracious, and be a little bit of a dramatist and storyteller.
Yeah. So this guy, sorry, it's fascinating. I think a lot of people think they need to have this big, massive, farm to full-time farm. But I think you're saying it requires a lot of creativity, marketing, people skills. What's he doing in the winter? I know you said he sells somebody else's meat, so that's probably one thing he can do.
Yeah. I don't know what all he's doing in the winter. I mean, he's got these greenhouses.
Okay.
So I know he extends his season a lot, and he's got freezers. So I think it slows down in the winter, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Summer's a sprint. When you're farming,
Right.
it's
Yes.
gonna have a little bit of downtime in the winter. So in the winter, I know it's a lot less, but
he makes it work.
Yeah, he makes it work. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now you mentioned farm tours, and I've heard of this. I've seen some of it. I haven't actually been to anything like that, or sort of like farm events, agritourism. I was at you were there too, at the Ozark Homestead Expo, and someone there was selling these little cabins, and they were saying that some people are even putting up it's called a bunkie on their property and doing like a farm stay. How have you seen all of this like farm tourism type stuff working?
Oh yeah, it's huge. It's huge. Here's what's happening. If we want to, back the camera up a little bit and look at big trends, if you watch the theme park attendance is way down. I don't know if you realize that. Disney's way down, Six Flags is way down, Busch Gardens.
I mean, I hate them. I hate going to stuff like that, but other people seem to love it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, you know what? It's expensive.
It's expensive and stressful, and lines and hot.
Yeah. So where I'm going with this is that the new kind of relaxation or recreation trend is, can we do something close to home, fairly cheap, that doesn't require a bunch of whatever vacation time planning, a smaller deal.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so these maybe you've heard of glamping. Yeah, glamping. You use the word bunkies. These are all parts of, as people become more and more disconnected from the land and their food, they're yearning for a real experience, a real opportunity. Well, going to the Himalayas to climb Mount Everest, that's a kind of big deal.
Right.
You want a experience, but you can go to a farm and spend the night in a glamp, or a little bunkie or something, and maybe the farm. Maybe you can go gather the eggs. Your kids can gather the eggs. Maybe you can see them milk a cow. Maybe they'll make some butter. You can help make some cheese. You can butcher a chicken. You can barbecue a chicken. There's
right.
a million things that you can do, and they're real. They're not fantasy. They're real. And when you leave, you've got this wonderful memory, this experiential memory of the real. There's a book out, Selling the Invisible, and the whole thesis of the book is that every time you buy something, the actual value is not in the physical thing that you bought.
Right.
It's always in the emotions and the memory, the dopamine that comes, when you think about the invisible parts of what you bought.
That's marketing 101, right?
Exactly. What were the people like? What was the experience like? How did I feel? All those things. So, I heard an MIT professor recently. He said the farm of the future. This was interesting. He was one of these, forecasting type guys, and he said the farm of the future is going to be, it's going to be the center of our nutrition, our fellowship, and our information about life, information about things. And, if you're familiar with Jenny Urick, one
Yeah.
house an hour
She's been on
outside.
my podcast before.
Yeah. So her whole deal is the value, the information that comes when you are outside and using your imagination to do things. The average middle schooler today is 9.5 hours. Get that, 9.5 hours on the screen. So that's using somebody else's imagination and being focused on a screen, as opposed to, having a stick. And the stick can be a gun, it can be a bow and arrow,
Right. Yep.
it can be a sword, it can be, a staff, a cane, a cattle prod, it can be, a stick can be all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what you get, outside. And so farm events, if you can provide a place for kids to come out. So on our farm now, we have an entire playground now. We've got a great big box with pebbles in it, with excavation stuff that kids can sit on, and they can move this stuff around. We got teeter totters, a fort they can climb in, a tire swing, and it's not the big public playground, so most of the time when kids are out at the playground, there's only, 4 or 5 there. It's kind of, they feel kind of exclusive. They get to kind of be there on their own. And it doesn't take very many of those to get people coming to your farm and looking around and see what you have to sell.
That makes sense. We have in our area just several things that have popped up over the years, like a lavender farm, and people are just looking for things like that to go do. I don't feel like when I was a kid, we went to pumpkin patches and lavender farms to get little sandwiches. It's a new thing. Like, I don't recall ever going to a pumpkin patch, maybe just like to get pumpkins. But yesterday, my sister and I, we met up at the pumpkin patch and we stayed there for hours. We bought the little, they have that little inflatable pillow thing, and the kids did that. They did the corn maze. I bought a couple pumpkins because it's just something to go do. And that's, like you said, it's more fun to me than taking the kids somewhere stressful, like a theme park or something like that. I think there's just, if you really start to think about it, there's so many things like that people are really craving to do. When I go to those places, they're always packed.
Yeah. And the other thing is the kind of things you're describing they're places that you learn about yourself. You learn about your own body. You learn about how to move. You learn how to, picking up a pumpkin. How do you pick, a little kid, let them struggle a little bit. Let them learn about, leveraging and get that thing up on you prop it up on your leg, and that is all part of starting to feel comfortable in your own skin. And if there's one thing our culture needs, I'll go down a rabbit hole, but there's one thing our culture needs, it is our kids to feel comfortable in their own skin. When you look at these school shooters, all these young boys that are shooting in schools, every one of them feels isolated. Nobody likes them. They're not happy in their own skin. They haven't found self-worth and affirmation. And there's something about, pushing yourself on a tire swing. There's something about making a little toy excavator go in a pebble box, the old sandbox, right? There's something about that sort of play that you discover who you are, what you can do, what your body can do, and those kind of things. And that's a really critical element in, I think, in developing self-worth. You have to be successful at accomplishing some meaningful tasks. And that's where the farm thing, kids, I mean, there is nothing like a 4-year-old reaching into a nest box and gathering eggs. I mean, that is the coolest thing in the world. Or shaking a jar and watching butter happen. I mean, that is just a wonderful thing. And so these practical elements of life are the critical foundations for developing self-worth.
many years ago when I was pregnant with my 5th child, I decided to add YouTube to my internet business to diversify and open up a whole world of opportunities. Many things have changed about YouTube since that day. A lot of things honestly have remained the same, but I love to educate students on how to create an income from home through YouTube with my YouTube Success Masterclass, which you can find over at bit.ly/farmhouse YouTube masterclass, bit.ly/farmhouse YouTube masterclass, all lowercase. There I share the mistakes that I made when I first got started, how you can achieve success faster, and how to earn a diverse and stable income from the YouTube platform. So if you are interested in using video to reach a wider audience for a business you already have, or you're just curious about what it might look like to incorporate YouTube into your life as a homemaker or a stay-at-home mom, go ahead and check out that free masterclass that I put together for you. Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. And I think people are really craving it and seeing the need for it. When we were at the Ozark Homestead Expo and we were on a panel, one person stood up and said that they had just moved. I forget where they said they moved from, but there were tons of people I met there who had all moved to the Ozarks from somewhere. And he had bought maybe like 17 acres, something like that. And he asked, what do I do? Where do I start? And I think you were one of them who answered, you and a few others, on just building the community. Because he was looking for like, put in this fence, get this animal. And you and somebody else started going on about like building the community around you because he was new to this area. Can you talk a little bit about that and how to do that?
Yeah, for sure. You got to realize that the old timers, and realize whoever was there before you is the old timer.
Right. Yeah.
They were there before you. And so, they're watching somebody come into the area, and they might be feeling a little bit crowded. They might not, who is this? What is this? So actually developing some friendships with nearby people, can pay huge dividends. I mean, the guy with the tractor and front end loader, the guy with the post pounder, the guy that knows how to, run a chainsaw. That maybe one guy maybe somebody has a bandsaw mill, that they can mill some boards. There are all sorts of skills and talents in a community, but if you don't know that they're there, you're just out here floundering, trying to do all this on your own. And there are few things that are as inefficient as trying to trying to do things you're not good at and don't like doing. There's somebody around that is good at it and enjoys doing it. Tap them onto your team. Yeah,
that makes sense. I mean, a lot of people right now are transplants from somewhere else. There's been a lot of that. I know you're on a multi-generational farm, and so you probably have your community very established, but I think that's some helpful advice for a lot of people because clearly, I went to an event in Nashville, and the number of people there who had just moved was crazy. And I felt the same way at the Ozark Homestead Expo. And it might have been a little bit of a skewed set because if you are new to an area, you're trying to homestead, you'd of course go to the expo. So I understand this wasn't like a sample size, but or an accurate sample. But there's been a real big shift. People trying to start things and build community.
Yeah, and I mean, in our early days when we were starting, I mean, I had a neighbor that we shared a baler. We shared a hay baler. We were both small farms. And I'd use his, and then he had the baler, but he worked in a factory, so he did factory work, which really cramped him to make hay because he got home later in the afternoon. So I would go over and rake his hay for him. So when he got home, he was able to bale it. I'd catch his bales on the wagon, and then since I was here and I had jumped off the cliff, and come back to the farm full time, and we were struggling. In exchange, then Teresa and I used his baler, and we could bale hay in the early afternoon. Then I could go over and rake his, and we could help him bale. We worked together.
Yeah,
and those are the kind of things you can't You can't buy that for money. You just can't. You need those kinds of relationships to fill out your weak spots, because all the gifts and talents necessary to be successful don't grow on the same pair of legs.
Yeah, right.
You,
Yeah.
you got to have another pair of legs.
Yeah. And that's so foreign to our culture today. We feel, that like we can, that's just, I don't know. I don't think people really know their neighbors these days. That's just not how things are done. But as soon as you start breaking out, trying to do a lot of these things, you're going to learn the spots where you are lacking. And I think that that's a real important point. One person asks about polyface. You talk about generations, future generations, leaving a legacy. Can you speak a little bit to that and how that's impacted the decisions you've made over just, what's even the point? Like, why break out of your 9 to 5 and start trying to be a full-time farmer and all of that? What's the big picture?
Ooh, yeah, that's
like a whole speech I watched you do. Yeah. So you can just do in a couple of sentences. That'd be great.
It is. Well, so here's what floats my boat. What floats my boat is watching the land heal. And I mean, I like to see people buy good food. I like to see people healthy. I like to see all that. But what really wakes me up in the morning is being able to go out and participate in land healing and watch grass grow that was barren, watch soil build up over rocks, watch trees grow in gullies that used to be, washing away, fish swim in a pond that we make where there used to be just, something else. Anyway, yeah. the point is that that's what floats my boat. And so with that in mind, for me, the legacy comes in, well, what's the timeline on ecology? It's a long time. It's not a year, it's not 10 years, it's a long time. I had lunch. I was doing a biomass conference in DC a couple of years ago. I had lunch with an Austrian who was running a pellet operation in Maine to make wood pellets for pellet stoves. And I've been to Europe a lot of times, and I asked him, he obviously knew a lot about forestry, and he was from Austria. And I asked him, I said, every time I go to Europe, I'm just amazed at the stewardship of the forests. They're manicured. You don't see dense, scraggly forests like we see here in the U.S. They're all. I said, why is that? Boy, I was expecting some great, academic answer. Boy, he didn't bat an eye. He just looked at me. He said, royalty. It's one of those things. Royalty. What does that have to do with anything? Royalty? He said, yeah. The average tree in Europe. Historically, the average tree in Europe was owned by the same person, the same family for 800 years.
Yeah, wow.
In the U.S., the average tree is owned by the same family for 40 years.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's even that high, honestly.
you can't have a viable forestry plan if you're going to turn that ownership over every 40 years. So the idea of legacy is that you start on this piece of property, you nurture it, you caretake it, you watch it make progress, you watch different plants come in, different animals come in, you watch the soil build, you watch all this happen. Well, then what? And what we want is for future family, we want that legacy to continue. We don't want to just sell it for condominiums. We want to actually see it, see that legacy move forward so that the land becomes a connection, to a sacred task of redemption, remediation on that land. And that takes more than a generation. It takes a long time.
That makes tons of sense. And it's clear that you've had that vision on Polyface for quite a while. It's very clear.
Oh, yes. Yeah. When Teresa and I got married and we didn't have kids yet, we said, what's our dream? And my dream was, I want to see this populated with with people, in the future. I want to see additional incomes and additional stewardship, more eyes, more labor, more love, nurturing and caressing the land than we did at the time. And that's exactly what's happened. We now generate about 22 salaries off the farm. So it's
wow, yeah.
It's not a backyard operation. And we've got,
right.
lots of young people, lots of kids. There's lots of human joy and activity.
Yeah, it's amazing to see what a vision will look like that many years when you stick to the thing that you've set out from the beginning. And along the way, you've written lots of books. So tell the listeners, maybe, is there what book, if you haven't read a Joel Salatin book, what book would you recommend starting with? Probably depends on what they want to do, but
it does depend on what they want to do. So my soul book, I call it my soul book, is The Sheer Ecstasy of Being a Lunatic Farmer. It's by far the funniest book of all of them. There's a lot of satire, a lot of humor in it, but the reason I call it my soul book is because it is the most explanatory and definitive book defining here's what I do versus here's what conventional orthodoxy is. And I do it with a smile and with a lot of satire, laughing at myself as well. But like there's one chapter titled "Crooked Fences." We don't build straight fences. We build crooked fences. Why? Well, because we go with the terrain, and it changes everything when you let the terrain speak to where you're gonna, put your stuff on the ground. And but every farmer, you want to build a straight fence. Yeah, I mean, farmers brag about how straight their fences are, and so so it's that kind of contrarian idea that I explore. And so, that's a good one. I mean, if you're just starting out on a small acreage, of course, Polyface Micro is everything that we've done. Our first 20 years here were basically a glorified homestead, never made a living, didn't make any money, just off farm jobs. And then it became full-time employment, and we scaled. And so now this is everything we've scaled, miniaturized again for the tiny acres. I mean, I have a chapter in there on how to have rabbits and chickens in a Manhattan apartment. So you can do a lot with a small scale.
Yeah. That sounds like a great place to start for so many listeners who just want to get started, not sure where. So tell everybody where they can find you. I know and where they can find your books.
Yeah. So I don't have a personal website. I'm old school. I'm still flip phone, no smartphone. I'm a basic Luddite. But but our website is polyfacefarms.com.
Okay.
So if you Google in POLY, it'll probably pop up, and that has everything from my speaking schedule to food that we sell, to events that we host, to the books. You can get a T-shirt that says "Everything I want to do is illegal."
Yep. I've seen that one around many a homestead expo.
Yeah. So the website is polyfacefarms.com, and you can see everything about us right there.
Awesome. And you usually have a pretty packed speaking schedule, from my understanding. Is that true?
Yes, it is. I'm gone a lot. I'm actually out about 1/3 of the time, and I'm home 2/3. So I'm now a part-time farmer, but I have a wonderful team here. Of course, our son Daniel now runs day-to-day operations. So I'm the most expendable person here at the farm. When I leave, it happens. Other people, when they leave, people have to kind of fill in, but
that means you did it right, I think. Over these years, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I hope so.
All right, Joel. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa. It's been a delight and an honor to be with you.
As always, thank you so much for listening. I will see you in the next episode of the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast.